The ultimate hater of black human beings. The ultimate hater. There is nothing about her existence that says, I'm black and I'm proud.
Be remiss not to also mention that Mazzula was arrested twice at West Virginia, once in 2008 for underage drinking and aggravated assault. Adreian Payne was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida, early Monday morning. In 2018, he was waived by the Magic after he was named in a report by ESPN's Outside the Lines that he'd been involved in an alleged sexual assault.
His name did surface in court testimony involving a case where his former teammate and another man, they've been indicted for capital murder.
The NBA media is often disliked by many, usually just for their annoying journalistic tendencies. But considering recent involvements, one member of the NBA media stands out among all. She goes by Malika Andrews. In her short career in basketball media, Malika has already swiftly established herself as a very disliked figure for various reasons. Whether it be from taking extremist stances, targeting specific groups of people, or just arguing out of bad faith, she's not unfamiliar to any of it. But despite these concerning incidents, the recent large-scale firing in an attempt to cut costs by ESPN saw the exit of many experienced and clean-slated analysts and hosts including Jalen Rose, Jeff Van Gundy, and Max Kellerman, while Malika Andrews remained untouched, causing outbursts among the community. While unsurprising, there is no doubt that NBA players, fans, and even her co-workers aren't fond of her. But why is she still such a favorite at ESPN? This is just one of the many questions we'll be answering very shortly. Before we get into that, more recently, the spotlight returned on Malika after the 2023 NBA Draft, where Malika Andrews publicly read out dramatized headlines of Brandon Miller's past, painting the second overall pick in a false and unflattering manner, attempting to tarnish his name. Some claim this was an unintended attack, but judging by Andrews' previous public comments, this incident targeting someone like Brandon Miller should have come at no surprise. Previous encounters saw her get into ill-intended exchanges with Giannis Antetokounmpo, Matt Barnes, and Stephen A. Smith, just to name a few. But before we get into how these altercations developed, let's rewind the clock and better understand who Malika Andrews is. Malika Andrews was born in January 1995 in Oakland, California, to a personal trainer father and an art teacher mother. She attended a private coeducation prep school called Head Royce School, and she proved to be great academically. Although things seemed to be going great, behind closed doors it was a different story. Malika Andrews would later claim that as a middle schooler, she was angry, depressed, and anxious, and suffered from multiple eating disorders. She would state that from 14 years old, she would be in survival mode, later admitting to her parents that she may need some professional help. As a result, her parents would enroll her into a therapeutic boarding school in Utah at 14 years old. If you didn't know, a therapeutic boarding school is a school focused on creating a therapeutic schooling and housing environment for students with emotional or behavioral issues. Regardless, she would get through these tough times and graduate high school in 2012, and would later work at a civil rights law firm with her grandpa for a year, before she began her communications degree at the University of Portland. During her time in college, she would take on the journalistic roles at the university, where she was a sports writer, sports editor, and editor-in-chief. After graduation, Malika would introduce herself to Adreian Wojnarowski at the 2017 Summer League, but it would be years later until they would work together at ESPN. Anyways, her academic results and diverse portfolio of work at her university would still earn her various internship offers. Coming out of college, she worked 1 year with the Chicago Tribune before joining ESPN as a reporter, covering the Chicago Bulls and Milwaukee Bucks. While Malika was closely covering the Bucks vs Raptors series in 2019, was when her first controversial incident would arise. Following the Milwaukee Bucks' series defeat to the Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, a tense situation unfolded between Malika Andrews and Giannis Antetokounmpo during a post-game press conference.
So you guys have talked a lot about how at this point, sometimes it takes experience. I'm wondering if now that you have some of that experience, if you see more validity to that point, or what you think about that now that you've gone through it.
As you can clearly see, as soon as Malika begins talking, Giannis' face changes before he later walks out of the room. The reason as to why Giannis left was that within a short 15 to 20 minute time frame following his team's exit from the playoffs, Giannis would be notified of an article written by Malika Andrews. In the article, Malika had gone into great detail about Giannis's perspective on his future at Milwaukee with free agency approaching. The article basically created the narrative that his commitment to remaining in Milwaukee was based on whether the Bucks reached the NBA Finals or not. As a result, Giannis would not say a single word and see himself out, due to seemingly not wanting to partake in a conversation with her at all, as it seemed her journalism methods didn't sit right with him. Although some will claim Giannis is overreacting and that Malika was only doing her job, the subsequent controversies that emerged shortly after left the NBA community even more stunned. As time went on, Malika Andrews began being given bigger opportunities at ESPN. In late 2021, due to a diversity requirement and being set up, top ESPN host of 6 years Rachel Nichols was fired by ESPN after invasive methods were used to spy on her and set her up. Anyways, this role later opened up to Malika Andrews, an ideal candidate in the role to fit diversity requirements, and soon Malika Andrews would become a regular host that would be seen on ESPN. In early 2022, Malika would get into it with Matt Barnes during a LeBron versus Kobe debate.
No, I'm definitely not saying that, but what I'm saying is Kobe would get in, like he would not let the way some of his teammates play.
Get in someone's face and it doesn't turn into wins, then you're just getting in somebody's face.
But it's going to be a problem the entire season.
Months later, she would get into another debate with ex-NBA players.
You can't look at a person. Yeah, but you're making an assumption.
Yes, you can.
You can't look at a person and know what their intent was.
There is no doubt that Malika's ego is in her way during these arguments, forgetting that she's debating ex-NBA players about basketball. Although these were just small confrontations, it was just a taste of what was yet to come. In September 2022, reports came out that Celtics head coach Ime Udoka was exposed for having a consensual relationship with a member of Celtics staff, breaking team rules, later resulting in his suspension as their head coach for the entire season that followed. In response to the situation and later suspension of Udoka, many members of the NBA media would give their input, including Stephen A. Smith. Stephen would come to the defense of Udoka, pointing out the hypocrisy with the entire publicized incident involving Ime.
Every single sport, there's people messing around with each other within an organization.
Yep.
It happens all the time. That is the problem with this issue. This black man that you got up here, we talking about him on national television because you publicize a personal matter where there's a whole bunch of issues personally that have happened in NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, and other sports. And we don't hear about their personal business.
This would proceed to get Malika heated and on her high horse.
Stephen A., with all due respect, this is not about pointing the finger. We are not here, Stephen A., to further blame women. That is not why we are here.
So Stephen A. had to show her who was the real boss.
I don't appreciate where you're going with that. My issue is all of this being publicized. The point that I'm trying to make is just like you're not mentioning. Excuse me. I listened to you. You're the one telling me to stop on my show. It ain't happening.
However, when discussing the same topic on Malika's show, things went a little different with Kendrick Perkins.
This relationship that was had with Ime Udoka and one of these women, it was consensual, meaning that this woman actually played a part in it too. So my thing is, yes, Ime Udoka was wrong. We get that. His punishment, he deserved that, and whatever else follows, I hate it for him, but he put himself in this position. But why are the other people getting left off the hook?
Well,
that's the problem that I have right now. Everybody got to be held accountable.
It is unfair and irresponsible of us to go and to speculate on that, because what we have to...
Well, I'm not speculating.
Sure.
I have the information. I'm not speculating.
That whatever rule, the conduct that was broken on one side, it is not the same on the other side. I thank you for your perspective.
Although it's easy to point the finger at Malika, the reality of the situation goes deeper and may only point to Malika Andrews as merely just a messenger. Because the truth is, Malika Andrews fits in perfectly as the ideal candidate to promote the woke or feminist narrative that most media tend to push. I think these clips of Jalen Rose may just prove this.
We know his name. Maybe I'm missing something as it relates to the law, but why we don't know her name? It's not like she's a minor. I feel like we should know her name publicly as well.
After openly sharing his potentially controversial opinion, Rose would swiftly make an apology soon after, taking back everything he said.
And I would like to apologize for a comment I made earlier on NBA Countdown. I questioned why a woman's name who had an alleged affair with Celtics head coach Ime Udoka was not made public.
I think it's pretty obvious what ESPN thought about his initial statements. And after assistant coach Joe Mazzula was named interim coach after Udoka's suspension, this is what Malika said to welcome him.
Mazzula was arrested twice at West Virginia, once in 2008 for underage drinking and aggravated assault, and then again in 2009 for domestic battery after an incident at Morgantown Bar.
You might be wondering, is Malika okay? How does it make sense to bring up someone's criminal history from 13 years ago, in a situation where no crimes were committed under the law? However, when considering Malika's recent comments made about Brandon Miller, a clear yet disturbing pattern is becoming evident. To add to this, around a month after the Ime Udoka situation, during a segment reporting on the death of former Michigan State player Adreian Payne, this is what Malika had to say about Payne.
Adreian Payne was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida. Played 4 seasons in the NBA with multiple teams. In 2018, he was waived by the Magic after he was named in a report by ESPN's Outside the Lines that he'd been involved in an alleged sexual assault at Michigan State in 2010. No charges were filed in that case.
Again, the pattern of unnecessarily airing out the criminal history of black men during a time of vulnerability continues. So the question remains, did she speak these words of her own accord, or was she just reading from a script? If she indeed chose to bring up this incident unprompted, it reveals a deep-rooted hatred towards black men. If she didn't, then it brings up a deeper issue within the roots of the organization. Regardless, this doesn't take from the fact that Malika is the one making these absurd and damaging statements. Following this statement, it wouldn't be long until Malika Andrews' antics on television would again turn heads. While welcoming Jalen Rose back during a segment of a show, this happened.
Get your finger out of my armpit. We're just happy to see Jalen Rose. Welcome.
As you can clearly see, Jalen's hand is by no means under Malika's armpit, and even if it was, why does that need to be brought up on the spot in such an accusatory manner? Nevertheless, another baseless accusation by Malika, and Jalen Rose had to find out the hard way. To add to these 2 instances involving Ime Udoka and Adreian Payne, more recently, Malika Andrews would bring up an alleged Brandon Miller incident on draft night.
His name did surface in court testimony involving a case where his former teammate and another man, they've been indicted for capital murder.
Many claim this as unnecessary and undoubtedly an attempt to tarnish Miller's name, just like many other black men. In this situation, Malika provided limited context, reading a sensationalized headline aimed at portraying Miller in the most negative light imaginable within a short segment. After considering Brandon Miller was never charged for the incident in January, her airing out a blanket incriminating accusation adds to another example of Malika Andrews showing contempt towards black men. Although Malika Andrews has not had the easiest upbringing by any means, this does not excuse her actions. There's no denying that she's swiftly established herself as a disliked figure in NBA media by her colleagues, as well as NBA players and fans, as a result of not just her typical journalistic tendencies, but her tendency to consistently attempt to tarnish the reputation of black men in the realm of sports. Malika's clear discrimination of black men on the extremely large platform is simply unjust, but what's more alarming is that the company that hires her continues to encourage her without punishment. After ESPN recently released their list of firings for the year, fans were outraged after discovering Malika Andrews was not on the list. Although many of us see through her often insensitive actions, to ESPN and sports media as a whole, she's probably seen as a loved and protected figure that can do no wrong. And the truth is, there is no sign that the rise of Malika Andrews in sports media will be stopping anytime soon.